and welcome to the Cynic Weekly. I'm your host, Christopher Gallagher. It's Thursday, it's the 16th of October, 2025, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by our very good friend, Stuart Dugan. Hello, Stuart, how are you?
I'm very well, Chris. I am slightly lonely this week, but that's okay. Leave it to those who are willing.
Yes, absolutely. We are just myself and Stu recording this week. Our good friend Scott had something come up at the last minute, and our good friend Barry is sunning himself in... Where is he, exactly?
Tenerife. Seems to have been hanging out at some sort of Hard Rock cafe.
Hard Rock Cafe. Good stuff. Yep. Well, he needs to...
quite right.
Yeah, he needs to sun and, relax because Celtic are back. So, good fun.
Do you know what surprised me? I was like, that'll be good. The international break, the manager can get some work into the team. Every time I see him, he's somewhere else. He's certainly not at Lennoxtown.
I saw at least like 3 social media posts of people meeting Brendan Rodgers. I know that's kind of what you're referring to, but it was like, I met him in Derry. I met him in, London. I met him in, Manchester. It's like, holy fuck.
Guy gets around.
He does indeed. Has the break been good for you, Stu, in terms of, taking that little break away from Celtic and stuff?
It's been quite weird because I think that sometimes at the start of an international break, you think, oh, this is the worst thing ever. I'll never see Celtic again. But it's felt really, really long.
Yeah.
And I kind of think, in terms of how do I feel about Celtic, I think it was a necessary break because, as I think I said it the last time we were on, that I've enjoyed the almost the novelty of not knowing what you're getting from Celtic, where you're like, this is going to be a slog, but let's see what we get. And doing that 3 times in a week wasn't much fun, so it was actually quite nice having a little break from it. And now that it comes back around, I'm sort of at the point where I'm like, okay, let's see. Let's see what we get. I'm ready to see what the next big catastrophe is, I suppose, or just to see what direction it's all going. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Who knows? So, yeah. I think it's been quite interesting as well that even though there has been obviously continual off the pitch sort of discussion, and I know that we'll discuss some of that today, Celtic hasn't really dominated the airwaves at all. It's very much been focused around the new manager search for Rangers, and they've very much been kind of grabbing all the headlines. So it's maybe been a little bit out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Which maybe isn't the worst thing. But as I say, if the manager's away just having multiple holidays, then it's not like we're getting the work into the players, but who knows? Yeah,
it just kind of feels like every time we're going to kick off after a break, because there's another international break in November as well, just feels like if we're with time away, we'll be like, this is it. Don't you worry about that. Here we go. That's how I feel anyway.
I think that's been beaten out of me now. I talked about that before the Braga game. I really thought that maybe after Hibs, that we were starting to trend in the right direction. And then after that Braga game, it was like, okay, right, all bets are off. This could be really rubbish for a really long time. But that being said, coming back to Dundee away is probably quite a good fixture. Maybe. Who knows?
we just don't know. We get plenty. We got some news we're going to talk about. We're going to look ahead to the Dundee game. Get some wee segments we're going to look over. Opening question comes from Robbie. Robbie sent this in last week. We didn't have time for it on the agenda, which drops every Monday as part of the Cynic.co podcasts. I think we did 40 podcasts last month. We've done about 35 already this month, so, if you like Celtic podcasts consistently, sign up at thecynic.co or search for The Cynic on Patreon, and you'll get lots of content. So, Robbie sent this in, and he said, assuming Rodgers is away in May, if we continue the way we are this season, poor performances, don't do much in Europe, but stumble over the line and manage to win the league and maybe one of the cups, what is Rodgers' legacy as Celtic manager across his 2 spells? It's an interesting one. Obviously, we're in it at the moment, so it is kind of hard to have perspective. But as Robbie said, let's say we do win the league, maybe the League Cup, and Europe, it doesn't look great at this point. What do you think his legacy will be over the 2 spells?
So, over the 2 spells, I don't think that Brendan Rodgers in this second term has done... I don't think he will have erased what he achieved in the first spell, ultimately, which has been redefining domestic success for Celtic. We've talked about that a lot. it's the burden now of Celtic managers to have to come in and a treble is almost considered the norm.
Yeah.
Because he changed the standards of that. That's not to be right how he left the club, obviously, in his first spell. I think the second spell is more interesting to look at in isolation, because you would have imagined that he would want to have come back to correct his, let's be honest, his public persona with the Celtic fans and his standing in the club's history as this not quote unquote rat figure and actually like this, the best modern era manager that we've had. And it's just been probably a little underwhelming, I think, from what people would have expected. No domestic treble thus far. The best that you can probably point to is the Bayern ties last year and a bit of European progression, but ultimately that is still sort of glorious failure. And as glorious as it was, it's not the sort of thing where he's like, wow, he's come back and he's taken us to a whole new level, especially when you see how quickly it can be undone. So I think that would be quite an interesting one. Certainly he won't have changed any opinions about his style of football, and if anything, over the piece his style of football has got probably worse, or over the 3 seasons. Last year we played some scintillating stuff, but over the piece, quite underwhelming. The first season was a bit of a slog, and this season has proven to be a real slog. So I don't think that it will necessarily be style points when you have a comparison of like an Ange Postecoglou, who was here for a shorter period of time, but played such exciting football and achieved so much in such a short period of time. So it is an interesting one. I think how he leaves as well will probably play a big factor. If he is honest, if he is more fan than bored, shall we say, when it comes to just being clear about why he's not going to sign a new contract, why he doesn't want to continue on, why it's untenable ultimately, and maybe if that is in some way helping to apply the final bits of pressure that might get through with this fan movement that we're seeing. But yeah, I don't think you can erase the fact that he has had an indelible impact on the club and the club's history, but I guess it's maybe, I wonder if there's prime examples you could think of going back. They always say never to go back for a second spell, and it does feel a little bit like we've seen this before. There's nothing new to learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, because obviously there's lots of people who are clamouring for the idea of bringing Ange Postecoglou back, right? And I completely understand the logic of it. But learned your lesson. I mean, I thought it was quite odd as well, not to kind of harbour on too much about it, but the Steven Gerrard stuff, that he was the de facto like chosen one to come back, when for one you've got this slight revisionist history about how he actually was when he was here, but also this notion, I've seen him described as the only person who could come in and fix Rangers just now. I'm like, are you absolutely serious about that? Because Brendan Rodgers, you would have said, was a manager that Celtic couldn't attract, and we could never hope to get his likes again, and he's come back in and he just really struggled for like the first 6 months he was here, got a bit of a good calendar year out of the team, and then it's been pretty dire since. So it doesn't really equate that even if you have been really successful that you'll come back and just pick that up from where you left off. Yeah, I think just from my perspective, I think Rodgers will, later down the line, I think people will be kinder to him. Again, it does depend what happens this season. I think Celtic will win the league this season. I don't think it'll be pretty, but I think we'll probably have enough to get over the line. But I am worried about it. I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but I think we probably will. And I think if you kind of, in a decade's time, people will probably look at Rodgers far more favourably, I guess. That first season, I think, is, his first ever season at Celtic was just exceptional. Like, just something really, really special. And then it's obviously kind of, dropped off after that. But yeah, it's an interesting question, Robbie, and it's something, again, we'll probably look at down the line, because I think history is a lot kinder to managers the further away you get from their reign. And just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't like talking about Rangers, but with their managerial, I saw an article and it was quotes from Peter Grant, right, who, he was Stooge of the Week the other week, like I don't take his opinions, particularly seriously, but he did say that what he wasn't worried about the idea of Steven Gerrard coming back, or the ex-Sheffield Wednesday manager, but he was worried about someone like Muscat coming back, Kevin Muscat. And obviously he mentioned Sean Dyche as well, and he's like, these are the type of guys I think could get something out of Rangers. Do you buy into that? Do you think that's something that's could be true?
I think it's very hard to tell. I think that I would agree that of those names that you're sort of putting forward, yes, they are more likely to maybe get a tune out of them. I would imagine that there's a lot of people that talk about Kevin Muscat's only achieved X, Y, and Z in lower subpar leagues, but they said the exact same thing about Ange Postecoglou, and he came over here and was essentially a revelation in the way that he did it, and that very quickly, it's always stuck with him. It stuck with him at Spurs as well in his first season, this notion that he's only ever won stuff, but then he wins the Europa League. So I mean, he just does tend to be successful. Obviously not at Nottingham Forest, where he's about to get sacked, but that's another story. I would imagine, I don't think that Kevin Muscat is quite the badge-kissing, brogue-swilling Rangers man that perhaps they think he is, but I think he's definitely... I think the reason that they're clearly going all out for him now is that it has to be fan appeasement, because missing out... The whole thing has been an unmitigated shambles, like the fact that you can't appoint a manager in that period of time, and that you have managers publicly coming out saying, it's not the right time, and it sounds all quite fishy. It's the same sort of stuff that the Celtic board have faced this summer, where essentially clubs have just come out and said you can't conduct yourself like that. It's unprofessional, and it's an embarrassing kind of punch on the nose for them. But the whole waiting 4 weeks to have this guy come in, I said yesterday, it feels very reminiscent of Gio sitting in the stands when he could have been there, and it goes both ways. Do they just cough up a trophy potentially by not having a manager come in and use the next couple of weeks to build his own, use that bounce to kind of win that semi-final against us and maybe win a trophy, or do they leave it later, and who knows? I don't know. He strikes me as a man that probably doesn't suffer fools, and will probably be a bit more disciplined and a bit more, able to take some of the heat of the job. But then I think you could probably say the same thing about Philippe Clement, and ultimately it's just a bit of a basket case. So
he was a big weirdo.
He was a big weirdo.
He looked like Frankenstein.
Yeah. You could argue that Kevin Muscat does as well. He looks like the actor Mark Strong, so that's perhaps more...
He does, yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? I think generally, though, any sort of new appointment, we talked about this as well, that with Russell Martin leaving, you have to assume that Rangers will get better and more competitive. And just generally, 9-point gap, it's big, but it's not at all unachievable. Especially when you just look at how the Celtic performances are. We just don't look like we're on an upward trajectory, and there's no consistency in the performances. And it's got nothing to do with they could appoint Kevin Muscat, they could appoint Broxy Bear. I'd still be very worried about that semi-final purely from a Celtic perspective, of how poor they've been recently in games against Rangers, how poor they are mentally when it comes to big moments and big occasions of late, that I don't really trust them to get over the line with it. So it could be a very easy, it's low-hanging fruit potentially for a new manager coming in there and getting a big win when you're not expected to. But yeah, who knows?
That's it. I think obviously the performance at Ibrox, where we didn't have one shot on target, whatever, where teams were, systematically dollying them, that's kind of my worry about the semi. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just before we kind of hit some news, obviously it looks like Rodgers isn't going to re-sign, right? It looks like we will have a new manager. I don't expect you to name names of specific managers. It's more about the overall thought about the manager himself. What sort of manager would you like to come in and see after Rodgers? Would you like a young progressive manager who's maybe in the infancy of his career? Would you like someone who has been around the block? What would you be looking for?
I think I'd probably be looking for someone that doesn't have a Celtic lineage in the nicest possible way, because I think that it might help in challenging some of the systems and some of the sort of status quo that we tend to have. We're going to talk about Neil Lennon later. The notion of like a Neil Lennon, a Scott Brown, irrespective of how beloved they've been as players or captains, to come in, they're still sort of company men, at their heart. And I would just hope that we could have something slightly more progressive than that. I'm not looking for some well, still like 30-year-old new guru that's going to come in, because you can't underrate the challenges of managing a club at the scale of Celtic. But it'll be interesting to see what the profile is, and I actually have found it quite interesting seeing the profile of manager that Rangers are looking for. That it's almost like they physically just can't appoint anyone. Like, there's nobody else to go, and this notion that like championship managers are, it's some sort of they're not equipped. So what level would you expect to kind of get? Someone like an Eddie Howe, for example, has proven what an excellent manager he was and what an excellent appointment he would have been when we went pre-Postecoglou. I find it hard to see Celtic appointing someone of that calibre, or someone of Brendan Rodgers' calibre when he came to the club the first time.
Yeah.
So you probably have to look a tier below. You probably have to look at something. I mean, the short list of managers that were talked about before it was Rodgers, Iraola, Farioli, Maresca. You are kind of looking at trying to get someone before they become the guy. Farioli's still kind of kicking about and hasn't quite had the same success as Iraola or as Maresca, so maybe it's someone at that sort of level. Maybe it is like we talked about it briefly the other day, Kieran McKenna, someone who's done all right at championship level, Michael Carrick. These were some names that were sort of linked with Rangers, but they were clearly very much like padding out the list, and they didn't ever seem to be much in it. I talked about Craig Bellamy as well. I think that he's quite I quite like his attitude to management. I quite like his attitude to trying to get Wales to playing expansive, attractive football whilst trying to get results. And I think a club like Celtic, it would probably represent a little bit of a gamble on our part, but also could be getting someone before they become someone.
Yeah.
So something like that would appeal. And I know I said no one with Celtic lineage, and technically that wouldn't work. But yeah, fuck it, him.
Yeah, I think what I think is interesting is, I don't know if this is true, I've not looked into the numbers of it, but it feels like managers seem to get sacked quicker in England, specifically the EPL, and it just feels like that merry-go-round is getting bigger. Like, I mean, there's a chance Postecoglou might lose his job after, 12 games or something?
Oh, it's even less. He's only played like 6 or 7.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, but I thought that was too little. But yeah, that's crazy. So I just wonder if there will be a sort of third option of managers who've maybe been in and out a couple of times, who want to try something different, want to play in the Champions League. It'll be interesting to see what the process is and how they approach it. I don't hold out hope. I really don't.
No, I think ultimately, yeah, you've got to remember that the people that are making these decisions are the people that we're currently trying to oust from the club. So that in itself is alarming, because they'll be if everything goes the way that you think, a continued series of protest and upheaval against the board, perhaps there's going to be a lot of change at that level. Best case scenario, let's say, and then you're bringing in a new manager and the squad needs overhauled. It's quite alarming, and probably needs quite a big character or quite an experienced character to handle something like that. I think if you're looking at in that sort of tier of manager you're discussing, it is probably the likes of, I don't think it'd be very popular when they were linked, but like a Graham Potter, a Gary O'Neill, managers who have had experience at the top level in England, but currently bombed out of the cycle, and just kind of somewhere in between. I also think that like you have these managers like Frank Lampard, I think is an excellent example, who are clearly very successful at championship level and just have kind of struggled to make that jump. And I think that management's quite an interesting thing, where just because you were an elite level player doesn't mean that you should therefore, feel the pressure to be an elite level manager. There's a perfectly viable ecosystem of managers that get teams promoted in England, and I think that maybe somewhere in that sort of space is where you would find the next Eddie Howe, the next whoever Maresca, but you just have to be quite savvy, and I'm concerned that we don't have that level of savvy operating at board level at Celtic to identify those. Yeah, absolutely. We'll just hit on with some news, and there was some kind of quite odd breaking news today. An article in the Times that I'll just read some of the quotes from it. Former Liverpool midfielder Bobby Clark
set to join Celtic in January. Bobby Clark is set to join Celtic from RB Salzburg in January for £6 million. Clark is on loan at Derby County, where he's played 10 times this season. However, the 20-year-old is set to make a permanent move to Scotland with Brendan Rodgers' side, who are second in the Scottish Premiership. Celtic's first game in January is at home to Rangers on the 3rd. Clark, the son of former Newcastle midfielder Lee Clark, has become a regular at Pride Park for Derby, who are 20th in the Championship. Made his debut at Liverpool at 17. Came on against Bournemouth, part of that Klopp side. Then he moved to Salzburg August 2024 for £10 million, which is just over a year ago. Signed a 5-year deal at Salzburg. He's been on loan at Derby, joining Celtic. Well, according to this report, we don't know the validity of it, but what's your thoughts on this? It's kind of quite odd that it's came out today. Obviously, the Celtic fan, I'm not saying that's why it's came out today, but there is that sort of linkage with the fan meeting and stuff. What's your take on it, Stu?
So I think it's dead weird. That's the headline. That it is very strange. And I think it is quite indicative of how I feel about Celtic at the moment, that signing a prodigious 20-year-old midfielder from Salzburg for £6 million kind of got my back up a wee bit. in the sense that, so currently, if you look at that Celtic team, there is, if you had to put just call it green, yellow, amber, red of areas where the squad, if you looked at it in a sort of heat map of where you're crying out for players, I know that it's not been very functional, but in terms of active bodies that can play, I think the centre of the pitch is probably quite green in the context of the squad, whereas you've got areas of the pitch that are flashing red like skull and crossbones. We are absolutely fucked here. And so to get the news that you can't sign a right winger at all over the 8 to 10 weeks or whatever you've got in the summer, you can't sign a striker after nearly a calendar year of knowing that you need to replace Kyogo, but we're to believe that they are preemptively signing a 20-year-old in January because maybe one of the 6 midfielders that we currently have is going to move on in that window. And I understand that when stuff is really bad and then it starts to change, you shouldn't look at the changes and go, well, fucking, you should have done this before, because maybe it is an indicator that things are starting to get better. But it's just fucked me off a wee bit, because I'm like, why couldn't you do the business? You're talking about literally 6 weeks ago. If that was business to come in, nothing. I don't think anything will have changed in that Celtic squad so dramatically in that 6 weeks, where Paulo Bernardo has said, enough is enough, I'm off, I need to go, and they've gone, oh God, let's scramble and sign this player. Similarly, Arne Engels is having a tough time, Rio Hitate's having a tough time. I don't feel like this small period of time has been enough for them to go, that's it, I'm down in tools, I'm going to be off in January. And then the club has managed to motor in and get this deal over the line. So why couldn't it have been done earlier? Why can't you do this sort of thing why is it not like a right midfielder? Why is it not a striker that we're being linked with? What are the resources that the club actually doing? And also I saw that, I think it was at the bottom of the article, it said, described it in a weird way. It was like his quest, he's coming back to the UK and his quest for first team football or for minutes and stuff. Yeah, now that it looks like it will lead him to Glasgow and Celtic's quest to win their 5th successful Scottish Premiership title and European football under Rodgers in the Europa League. Yeah, and I guess it's the stuff about, there was something about his minutes maybe, but I was like, there is no guarantee of any minutes, and on paper it sort of smacked of almost like a Callum Osman type deal, that this has come up, he might be one for the future, get him in, but obviously with that sort of fee attached, maybe it's just business that's come across our desk and we've gone, yeah, that's fine, we'll do it. But why can you do this sort of business quickly and quietly when there's no pressure in the transfer window, but you can't just go and sign Tanetke a week earlier, 2 weeks earlier for your Kairat game? So it just annoyed me ultimately. And where's he going to play? Who's he going to play ahead of? And is it just going to now lead to months of speculation as to who's going to leave to give them these minutes?
I think this is really odd. This is really odd. The timing of it's odd. The position. I think that, we did on the Cynic.co, we did a podcast on Saturday. It was myself, yourself, Stuart, and our very good friend Alan. And you made the comment about how frustrated you were getting when Brendan Rodgers at press conferences was saying, can you play right wing? LOL, like making light of the fact that we don't have a right winger. And so for this to be announced, it smacks of, well, this, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
I don't believe that this will happen. I believe Celtic have contacted the Times and leaked a story, and then people are like, oh, look what we're doing. We're going to have it after a player. We're going to pay £6 million for him just before the Dundee game to appease fans. Do I think this is going to happen? Probably not. You might never hear about it again.
Even just, so I was trying to think about it. What the fuck are Derby thinking? So he's on loan at Derby at the moment. He's playing week in, week out for them. And they are, it's not a great indicator as well. He's playing week in, week out, and they're 20th in the Championship. That's not to suggest that a 20-year-old is responsible for that. Obviously, there's a lot more going on, and it's pretty early in the season. But I was trying to think of a comparative example, and I guess we don't really have one because we don't really have a lone player that's currently in an important part of the first team. The closest I could think of, and obviously it's absolute nonsense, if Jemai Simpson-Pusey had been playing week in, week out for Celtic all season, and was like, say it was Carter Vickers and Simpson-Pusey, and the news dropped that in January he was going somewhere for £6 million, you'd be like, what the fuck? Why?
Yeah.
How's that? How can that even literally legally happen? Surely you have terms in a loan deal that the player can be recalled, but you can't just, what? I thought we had a deal. And that's just weird. And what does it do to the player? What does it do? Is he going to continue to get minutes every week for Derby, or is he now going to be bombed out of that team?
What happens if he gets injured?
What happens if he gets injured? Just dead weird. And then I say that I don't really have much of a profile of the player. I looked briefly. Transfermarkt said that he was like a 6 was his primary position, but it also said that attacking midfielder had been his primary position and that he played on the right. So without actually, crunching numbers and looking at the stuff, I don't really know where he would fit in. But yeah, it's just all bizarre, and it's still so far away before you get to all that. I know. Side of it.
Our good friend Will is we're recording a podcast tomorrow looking at Dundee in a little bit more detail, but Will is going to take a look at Bobby Clark, so that'll be available tomorrow on the Cynic.co. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about Bobby Clark as a player. Again, whether it happens or not, I don't know. But just finally on this story, who do you think goes? Like, because Celtic aren't the type of club to bring a player in and not sell someone. You've got what do you call it? You got Luke McCowan, you got Bernardo, and you get Engels, who are the 3 players who aren't starting. It would have to be one of those, you'd imagine.
Yeah, potentially. The other one, just because he's not involved at all at international level, Ray Hatate. Yeah. It's a big year for him with the World Cup coming up. In a similar way that, Kyogo was informed that he wouldn't really be considered unless he went to a top 5 league, and that sort of prompted his move to Rennes. Is it Hatate? Has he put his hand up and said, I actually want to go as well? Dyson's going to go, I want to go, it's time to move on. And maybe this is like a bid to avoid a Maeda style situation. Or is it Engels is saying, I need minutes because I'm also not getting involved in the national stage and I need to play my way into form. I don't think it'll be McCowan. Bernardo's an interesting one because prior to the Braga game, he hadn't really played much, but then there'd been an indication that, he hadn't been fit or hadn't been fully fit, and you would maybe see more of him. But I guess, it'll be interesting. I presume now that it's in the public domain, they'll ask the manager about it tomorrow, and we'll see where we're at. And that's also quite interesting, given the Michael Nicholson shrugging his shoulders sort of comment from the minutes of the board meeting. Is this a club signing? Is it not a club signing? Is it a Brendan Rodgers signing? Is it not a Brendan Rodgers signing? Why is Brendan Rodgers signing players if he's not going to sign a contract?
Yeah,
and so on and so forth.
It's just going to add fuel to the fire, I think. But yeah, so that was announced today. Again, it's an article in the Times. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. I just wanted to see if, obviously, it's been the international break, so we want to catch up on some news. Did you see the Willie Collum stuff on the Celtic penalty?
I actually didn't know. Was this the refs review thing?
Yeah, it's the Scottish FA's VAR review show. So it was just some comments about the penalty at Kilmarnock. So this is the comments from Willie Collum. It's a really debatable incident. The big thing for the VAR here is about the arm being up. If the shot goes direct here and hits Lewis Mayo without a deflection, it's 100% a penalty kick. Even in this situation, with this deflection, in law, you can justify the penalty. However, I've said from day one, we've spoken about stakeholders' views. Nobody accepted this. The feeling is that this should not be punished going forward. Moving forward, if this exact situation happens again, we do not want to award a penalty kick. So that's what he was talking about. He was basically saying, aye, it's in the law, but also, people don't like it, so we're just going to no do it. There was, that mad referee podcast, the Ref's View or something.
The Rangers one, yeah.
Yeah, the Rangers one. They were like columns, he's completely contradicting himself and he's the devil and what Rangers! And they just streamed Rangers for 10 minutes. But some of the quotes from that are like apoplectic. The reason I'm bringing this up is just in general, like, moving forward, it just does not feel like any situation regarding penalties, at the least. There's other situations on the park that this could affect as well. But it just feels like they're interpreting it every single different way.
Yeah, I would actually say it's rare that I'll say this, but I would almost be willing to cut Willie Collum some slack on this, because I think it's like an IFAB thing where across football at pretty much every level, nobody knows what the state of play is with handball, specifically ball to hand to ball, deflections, how close it is, the silhouette, not in the silhouette, what's a natural movement, what's not a natural movement. And you can tie yourself in knots on it. I think that, that there is no right or wrong ruling. I think that you get some... So a good example would be the Motherwell one. Boy charges out, it's Cook, isn't it? And he's kind of turned and his arm's kind of gone out, and doesn't mean that, I think it's McGregor's shot, it doesn't mean that that's going in, but it's a handball, so fair enough. At the time in the Kilmarnock game, I felt like we'd kind of got away with one a wee bit, just because in the context of it, it's last minute, we haven't played very well, we should have probably managed the game better.
Yeah. And
you can see those decisions not going for you. You can see those decisions going against them. Celtic have had some really bad ones. And so, in the sense that the classic or the even out over the course of a season, I did just sort of take it as, well, this one will even out, if not for something that's happened to us before, something that will inevitably happen to us moving forward. So we'll just take it and consider ourselves a wee bit fortunate here. And I guess that, people can be up in arms about it all they want, but there'll be examples of this, I'm quite sure, this weekend, if not in Scotland, then in the Premier League, and then we get into Europe. It just happens. Look at what happened in the, with Ian Atchell's goal, that the ghost handball. Could you argue that that's penance? That's 1-1 in that regard. So they do just even out, and it's a difficult one. But until there's some sort of much clearer implementation of the rule at a global level for the game, certainly at Scotland, how poor they are at sorting these sorts of things out, it will not be the last time that we're talking about this sort of thing.
I guarantee that it'll be penalty Rangers at Ibrox, though, right? Innit?
Absolutely. Get Neil McCann off to a flyer.
Yeah. I think it's Stephen Smith they've confirmed.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, they have confirmed that, yes.
Yeah.
Neil McCann on commentary. That's what it will be.
Comms. Couple of fixture changes. Celtic. So the reason I bring this up is because the St Mirren versus Celtic game, Saturday the 22nd of November, 8 p.m. kickoff.
It's Saturday night as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you like an 8 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday night?
No, I have to say I don't, and I don't mean that from obviously the away fans' perspective of maybe just having the whole day at the pub and going to the game. That's probably great fun, but if just generally speaking, I find that a little bit of fatigue sets in over the course of a day. If you've got a good game at midday, if Celtic play at 3, and if there's maybe a good Premiership game on at 5, by the time 8 o'clock rolls around, you're like, right, that's plenty. Pack it up. I don't need to see Brentford, Burnley. But then obviously, if you're having to wait until 8 o'clock for a Celtic game, it's just a bit like, come on.
Yeah, I'm the same. So the changes, St Mirren Celtic game, 22nd of November. Hibs and Celtic on the 30th of November, that's 12 p.m. And Dundee United Celtic 17th of December, which is a Wednesday, 8 p.m. So they've just been changed for TV. I was going to bring up a whole big thing about, being at the beck and call of television and how that affects the match-going fan, but I think we all kind of were at the same place with it.
Yeah, I think it is. It's getting much worse. I saw a tweet yesterday. So obviously, it's 10x worse in England with EPL games, and I think it's something like Man United's next 12 games, none of them are at like a Saturday 3 p.m. at Old Trafford. They had another one moved to like a Monday night, and it's something crazy like that. So when the price of tickets at football is scandalous anyway, but then for fans that travel from up and down the country or from Ireland for Celtic, it just makes life so difficult, and there's just no thought given to them, no compensation. It's just, oh, by the way, we've moved that at a whim. Sorry, bye.
Yeah.
Someone will take your ticket, bye.
Well, that's it. It's really just becoming such a different kind of experience following your club if you go home and away, and just the changes not only come, but they come sometimes quite quick as well, and it's hard to kind of change travel stuff, And also that's before you get into what it must be, it'll be less than 12, 18 months before you get EPL games played in other countries, because I think, is it Serie A that they've agreed to do it? Serie A and La Liga as well.
La Liga, yeah. So that's an inevitability for the biggest league in the world. I don't think that's something that's going to happen at Scotland. In Scotland, there's probably not a clamour to move Celtic Dundee to Athens.
Well, that legitimately Celtic Dundee was the game that was proposed by the Dundee owners, because they are in Philadelphia or somewhere, and that was the game they proposed. Celtic Dundee Dundee Celtic in America as a kind of exhibition. I know it's a league game, but an exhibition league game, very similar to what's happening with Barca and Miami and all that. It's just
it's amongst the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. The way things are going, it's going to be an unrecognisable sport in about 4 or 5 years. You probably won't get 3 o'clock kickoffs on a Saturday. Like, genuinely, they're changed so often now. Just a note about Celtic's second largest shareholders, Lindsell Train. Look, we're not the people for this, but I'll just say it anyway. Lindsell Train Limited, owned by Michael Lindsell and Nick Train. Oh, they've put both names in there. That's good. With a net worth of 13 billion, the second largest shareholder at Celtic. But they've opted to reduce their stake by 0.69%, equal to around 750,000 shares. It means their voting rights also take a hit, dropping from 16.39 to 15.70. Again, just when something is kind of flagged up about Celtic shares, it's obviously very important. We'll talk about the collective in a few moments, but we're not necessarily the most savvy when it comes to the financial part of it, but it does feel like something's maybe not a miss, but something's happening with that.
Yeah, I think it would certainly be odd, because generally speaking, billionaires probably fine. They're probably not shipping shares because they're desperate for money, and perhaps it's more of a power thing. Who's going to take up the shares? Are they good billionaires? Are they bad billionaires? Are they freeing up more shares for Dermot Desmond? Are they freeing up more shares for the Celtic fan to oust Dermot Desmond? Who knows? Certainly not me. Martin Friel, Ian Dugan. These are the people that probably know.
The biscuit team.
But yeah, one to keep an eye on. I'll message them after this. And that's not helpful for the listener, but sorry, that's the way it is.
I will message them over the weekend, and we'll pick it up on the agenda on Monday.
That's a better way to get the information out than just me having it
after we record.
Yeah.
We've got some news about. So the Green Brigade put out a tweet yesterday. I'm just going to read it out for you. It's a League Cup semi-final update. As a result of the ticket allocation reduction at the upcoming League Cup semi-final, the Green Brigade has received no ticket allocation. Although we wholeheartedly reject the notion of collective punishment and have regularly defied similar suspension in the past, we will not be attending this match. We believe that the Celtic support is a watershed moment for unity and capacity to enact positive change at our club. We are committed to this goal and the development of the Celtic Fans Collective, which is the best available apparatus for improving the experience of all Celtic fans. Collective punishment is an unfair practice. It has repeatedly been used against football supporters for a variety of reasons to enforce conformity and sow division. Irrespective of any perceived concerns, the best solution will always be reached through meaningful supporter engagement and not through draconian sanctions. There is a persistent common thread running through Scottish football of poor fan relations, with Celtic sitting top of the league. In a further demonstration of a detachment from fans, fairness and transparency, Celtic has sold an undisclosed amount of standard tickets as hospitality packages for this match. Priced between £150 and £300, this legalised ticket touting exposes the club's desire to exploit supporter demand and sow unnecessary division between fans. Finally, we thank the boys for another gesture of solidarity. So the boys have came out and basically they are not going to be at the game either. They are talking about the Scottish SPFL's view on pyro and the disciplinary process around that. So we're not going to have the boys. We're not going to have the Green Brigade at the semi-final. What's your take on this, Stuart?
So I thought it was a really eloquent and well put statement. I thought, I'd already had, which I mentioned earlier, some pretty bad vibes about the semi-final, and this just also adds to that. But I really admire that they're taking a stand on it, and that there is probably a direct correlation between those groups attending and how the team will perform. And that's not a dramatic thing to say, because we've all experienced when they've been shut out at Celtic Park and just how bad the atmosphere is and how it can fester and really affect things on the pitch. I quite like, though, that there's a willingness to accept potentially, like, the stakes there are losing to your biggest rivals and losing the first domestic cup of the season, but they're very, very committed to this, and we've talked about how people are going to have to make sacrifices, and they're making a personal and collective sacrifice here. On the wider issue, it's another sort of shot in the foot from the board and how they've handled it. And yeah, it's the stuff about the hospitality packages. Everyone knew that they did that, but I would not be surprised if, in light of how the home cup ticket scheme has gone with people removing themselves, if they've not upped those numbers so that you'll still see the same number of fans, but they've actually just made more money and they've boxed out a lot of ordinary fans that have stayed on the scheme, and it's pretty grim. But that's what we're up against, and that's something that we're trying to oust at the moment, and it's very difficult. I saw one absolutely insane tweet that was doing the rounds yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, where they were like, the board have acted absolutely fairly. These people have brought the club into disrepute with their pyro, etc. Blah blah blah. I suppose the point, it's just an insane take.
yeah. Obviously, there is two kind of issues. Like, so the pyro thing. Clearly, no one is willing to have an adult conversation about pyro at football. This isn't just a Celtic thing. It's happening. The ultras groups throughout Scottish football want to bring colour, want to bring a certain level of spectacle to the kind of fans sections of it. They're all willing to have a conversation, but the small-mindedness, someone like, as an example, Tom English, pyro's bad, that's it. As opposed to, okay, let's have an adult conversation about it. Let's actually think about how we can bring pyro into it. And we consistently quote Sweden. We consistently quote Scandinavia, where there is safe pyro. They work together with the authorities and they make sure that it all comes across safely. There's just the ignorance and the, frankly, disrepute that the authorities have for Scottish football fans. This is just another example of it, Stuart.
Yeah, and I think that I can understand their frustration with Hampden specifically, because on a number of occasions now in November, as this game will take place, it often it derails kickoff. Like the last couple of sort of cup finals we've seen there, certainly, and I guess semis, you end up with this sort of awkward 4 or 5 minute delay as smoke clears and all that. So why is the decision just like, oh, we'll just ban all these fans? well, let's just get rid of all the fans for the whole game, instead of like, how can we solve this? Is there anything that we can do? Could we bring in measures that, that's going to mitigate this small problem that doesn't just rip the heart out of the game and rip the heart out of the occasion and rip the heart out of the spectacle? And you're right, I've spoken to people when I worked in a restaurant. I would see people that were sort of Celtic board adjacent coming in and talking. The way they spoke specifically about fans and pyro, it was just like, these people are animals, these people are like thugs, scum, and so they're just blanketing the whole group as such. And yeah, it's pretty grim, but that's what you're up against.
And that's what we need to kind of collectively try and change. On that, the Celtic fan collective, they are meeting this evening, and that's why the weekly's going out a little bit earlier. I'll be taking place in a location. I'm not going to say where, but I'll be there, and I'll report back on what's been said. We're not going to go too much into it because we have covered it fairly in detail over the last couple of weeks. But Stuart, is there anything you would like to put forward to see happen? Any small detail you'd like to look at?
I'm very interested to see what the next steps are, because obviously you've had that meeting. It's been very publicly made clear where both parties stand and their poles apart, and so I think there has to be an escalation. Alan was talking the other day about how you probably have to leave a few things in the holster, but I would start trying to really publicly hit them in the pocket. I would say it's time to make a formal stand that you want to, if you believe in this movement, if you want to be a part of this movement, these are the things that we would ask that you withhold currently while we're in this process of hopefully transition at the club. I've been thinking this for a wee while, the kind of notion of, and we did it in the season that shall not be named, sort of like email bombing, so to speak, of like just generic standardized email that could be weekly, it could be bi-weekly, it could be monthly, whatever you want, where it's provided to people and they just en masse, why have we still not had answers to X, Y, and Z? Why is X, Y, and Z still in position? What are the club planning to do about X, Y, and Z? And just having, it's the sort of thing that people can take on board individually if they don't really feel like they're a part of the collective in terms of Celtic supporters groups or podcasts or fan groups or anything like that. But even from a disruption, and Celtic don't have the infrastructure to evidently, or they either don't have the infrastructure or the people in place to run themselves as a sensible grown-up adult business. And so something as simple as that could be extremely disruptive and extremely frustrating and try and sort of move the goalposts, and it's very, very cheap, easy, affordable for people to do. So maybe something in those lines. And then, as we've talked about numerous times, physical presence at the stadiums, whether that's placards, banners outside games, before games, after games, during games, so that you have that constant physical presence and that constant reminder to make it uncomfortable for people to go, and for board members to go and enjoy the spectacle and enjoy the sort of benefits of being able to say that this is your club when people clearly don't want you there and they're not happy with how you're conducting yourselves. Absolutely.
As I say, we'll report back all good suggestions, and I fully back all of them. We'll be back next week, and I'll give a kind of rundown. We'll be talking about it on the Cynic.co probably through the week as well. So sign up for more Celtic content. It's time for Stooge Watch, or Stooge of the Week, whatever you want to call it. Some fairly robust statements from Stooge of the Week, Neil Lennon. He was interviewed. It was The Sun, of course. Yeesh. So he was asked. I'm not gonna go into too much. I have to read some of them out, man, because I read them and I balled my fist up. So he was asked about the Celtic fans collective, a collective that are just wanting to see change at the club. He replied, "I think it's unnecessary. I don't agree with it." Okay, good start. Asking after they asked him about replacements, and his reply was sarcastically, "Good luck," talking about replacements for the Celtic board. Then he goes on to say, now, Dermot is a genius, not just from a sporting point of view, but an intellectual point of view. He's very successful. Let's think about this in a Donald Trump voice. He's very successful, hugely successful, probably the most successful man I've ever came across.
Quite a good impression by your standards, Gall.
Yeah, I've been working on it.
That's good.
In terms of what he's earned and generated and built in his career, he's on an intellectual level of no one else I've ever come across. He's very, very forward thinking, always looking to the future. He's always looking to the future. Very proactive, supporting Irish sportsmen, whether it be Gall football or Gaelic football. Okay, that's fine. Happy with that. He loves the sport and he loves Celtic. Peter is not only a great administrator, but very astute. I fell out with him loads of times, as you do, over deals or contracts or whatever, but everything he did was for the betterment of Celtic Football Club. Every deal, every decision made, the club always came first. I think they've brought great success. They've fought many battles for the club, many battles they've won against the odds. I just think the success of the club has had since 2000 has been incredible. The amount of titles, Champions League, the UEFA Cup final. UEFA Cup final was 2003. Player trading, the money the club has, and how well run and sustainable the club is. The health of the club is what they make going forward. Blah blah. They know they're not going to be there forever, but they've achieved what. So this is the thing I have issues with all of that, right? But this one really annoys me. There's no way Martin O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers, Gordon Strachan, managers of that ilk would have come to Celtic if it hadn't been for Dermot. No way, honestly. So essentially what he's saying is Celtic is an attractive prospect for managers. The only reason that those guys came to Celtic is because of Dermot Desmond.
He's also listed Gordon Strachan on that list, which I find quite... He's really undone himself with that.
Look, Stooge of the Week. What I find... Just when, I've never forgiven him for what happened before, and it's not the fact that he didn't succeed as a football manager, it's how he spoke, it's his arrogance, it's his lack of accountability, it was everyone else's fault but his, all that stuff. That's what I have, staying on the job when he knew it was past him, all that stuff. But to say about talking about the fans trying to force change it's not even, if you think about it, just we stopped the protest to communicate with the club, to have a meeting, and him saying it's unnecessary, I don't agree with it. I find Neil Lennon has written himself out of the Celtic books for me. I think he's a counter to what Celtic need to do to progress moving forward. Stuart, I'm rambling. What's your take?
You're rambling, but I think that's all very fair points, and I think it strikes me as one very coordinated, but also very coordinated in the same way that initial statement from the Celtic board was very coordinated, and they thought, like, we've nailed that.
Yeah.
They thought, tell you what, let's get Neil Lennon in the Sun. Doesn't matter where it is. It'll get online. It's in the Sun, but people won't look by that. And get him to defend Dermot Desmond. And Peter Lawwell's gone, could you also defend me in that? And he's gone, yep, that's fine. I'll do that too. Not mentioning Michael Nicholson in any of that.
Yep.
Even though he's probably the most under scrutiny of everyone, it's very much just, let's put these people ahead. And again, see if they'd picked I was going to say like a Chris Sutton. You're not going to get that from Chris Sutton because Chris Sutton appears to be a man of principle. But like, Martin O'Neill has said some comments kind of adjacent to that in just a sort of old man shakes fist at cloud kind of way. But someone who is still so deeply, deeply unpopular with the Celtic support from, as you say, everything he's done. There's nothing that I think Neil Lennon can do to rehabilitate his image.
No.
And it's alarming that is the sort of appointment that they are absolutely capable of doing. Like, if Brendan Rodgers left tomorrow, if he said, Celtic have signed Bobby Clark without my say so, I'm off. That's the last straw for me. Celtic would absolutely go to Neil Lennon. Like, that is a very viable thing that they would do. And that is why it's so important to keep pushing on, and it's so important to make sacrifices, and it's so important to keep this in the news and keep it as a thing, because it is so reductive and so regressive as a movement, as a club of our standards, to think like that, to act like that, to be like that. And we talked a bit the other day about how some folks say that football's moved past, like Brendan Rodgers, and how maybe that's a slightly unfair statement. Football has moved past Neil Lennon in terms of just getting 11 technicians on the pitch and hoping that They'll bang it all out. And
I mean, it might get sacked by Dunfermline. So
exactly. So that's sort of where you're at, and it shouldn't be taken seriously. I can't think of anyone in the Celtic support currently who would go, Neil Lennon's got a point there. So I think it's just another example of how out of touch they are, that they think something like that would potentially have some sway.
Yeah.
And it just makes it look much worse.
He just frames these guys as more important than the club. Like, the club don't have a pull. The club are like, and that's what it always felt to me like he didn't see the football club for what it was. He saw the structure of the people being the football club, and I'm never forgiven for that.
Yeah, even so, I mean, Neil Lennon very clearly has personal relationships with these people, and he's going to bat for them. And there's a 1% of me that respects, sticking up for your mates. Brendan Rodgers also has a personal relationship with Dermot Desmond. I suspect he doesn't have a very good relationship with Peter Lawwell, but he's still been pretty critical of them, and is trying to work within the lines of calling it how it is, and also making it possible for him to still do his job. You're not seeing him kind of coming out and doing the buddy act. I know he has done that over the years, but where we are just now, and as bad as it's gotten, he's asked every week how it feels and how this can get resolved. And I think the last time he spoke prior to that meeting, he was a bit more open, saying hopefully they can get around the table and can kind of have a positive airing of views, because I think we can all accept that it's not harmonious and it's not a good place, and everyone is not pulling in the same direction. And Neil Lennon is almost coming out there going, everything is fine, which is just so counterproductive and so unhelpful at a time like this. And I think that he has the option to back his mates or just say nothing, and he's chosen the option to not say nothing.
Yeah. The words of boyhood Liverpool fan Neil Lennon. There we go.
You're going to say Christian Wolf, boyhood Liverpool fan.
That's true, yeah. Celtic take on Dundee on Sunday. It's a 12 p.m. kickoff, Scottish Premiership. We're back, baby. Just looking at some of how things lie. Celtic currently second, 17 points, 11 goals for, 3 against. We've drawn 2 games, we've won 5. Dundee currently 11th out of 12. Played 8, won 1, drawn 3, lost 4. They've scored 6, they've conceded 13. Got a goal difference of -7 and 6 points. How are you feeling about this one, Stu? Aye, agreed.
I think, to be fair, it's as good a fixture as you could ask for off the back of an international break.
Yeah.
I also really think that it seems counterproductive, but I think playing away from home is good just now from a footballing perspective. I think that Celtic Park provides a little bit of a comfort blanket and a little bit of a notion for some of these players that there's a 12th man that will pull you through, and that it's somewhat symbiotic, that if the crowd aren't with you, and I think about that in 2 small examples. You've got Nygren constantly going to the fans and trying to G them up, and Tenetke is quite a bad one for that as well. I would just let them to just focus on the game, just be really in the game, and maybe a little bit of attrition and a smaller, tight, crap pitch. You're obviously still going to have a big away support there, but just a little bit of adversity. I think that perhaps the team needs adversity right now. You saw that the best that we've seen of them was maybe the last sort of 15 minutes of that Motherwell game, when they were really up against it, and it was going to become very, very problematic if they dropped points, and they managed to dig it out, and they dug it out with some pretty, creative and expansive football by all accounts to the very, very death. And so maybe that will be helpful. Also, Dundee are just a poor side. I know that we dropped points there last year, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to go and roll them over, because I cannot envisage the Celtic team rolling anyone over currently, but it's as good a chance as you'll have. And in the same way that when we had the Thistle game, you were clearly playing against a weaker team on a poorer pitch, and there just was a bit of good feeling about it, because it kind of became shooty in, and if it could become like that, that would be really good, because I think that just for the morale of the team, it would be really, really helpful to get a good, solid win. It doesn't matter who it's against, and that's as good as we can hope for just now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously with it, Kilmarnock play. Hearts play Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. I think it's 5:45 kick-off on Saturday. So we could be going into this game 5 points adrift, obviously, with the game to be played. We did draw 3 each there last season. It was 3-2 down in like the 94th minute. We get the penalty. Arnie Engels scores it. So I think they'll hopefully look at that and say, we can't let that happen again. Some quotes from Brendan Rodgers about the actual the break. I think it's always a good opportunity. Over the course of the international break, some of our younger players have been able to get minutes in games, while others have used the time to work on their football fitness. Do you think he's talking about JSP there? He's probably not, but they did say after, was it the last international break, they'd be involved and he's just not been involved. It's still a really bizarre situation. He did play a B-team game.
Yes.
Do you think he comes into any sort of thought going into this?
No, ultimately I don't. I don't know who he's referring to. I think that the main... It's funny that, so not much, I would like an update on the Daisen Maeda situation, because I know that earlier in the week, both Maeda and Tanetki were injury risks, so Tanetki just then went on to play for Tunisia, so yeah, I would expect him to be absolutely fine. I would imagine the interesting things this weekend about the squad will be whether Alistair Johnston comes back into the squad. You think that maybe he does? If he was back in full training last week, maybe they want to just go slow with him, but
yeah,
you've got 2 really big games coming up after this one. So you kind of want him back in, definitely want him back in for Tynecastle and get him some minutes before that. And then the other one I would imagine would be Austin Trusty coming back into the squad. And then what does that do to Dane Murray, Ralston and Donovan? And I think that that's probably the point of interest. And then if Daisen Maeda is not fit, what do you do with the right wing? And then also, what do you do with the striker? Presumably is going to have to come on for Iheanacho at some point. So
yeah,
those are the kind of issues.
In regard to Alistair Johnson, I 100% agree with you. We need him back. I mean, ideally you'd love him back for the European game on the Thursday, but can he do 2 games within that short period of time? Probably not. So ultimately you would look at having him back for Tynecastle, was probably more important of the 2 games. There's lots of wee interesting ones. I saw a trustee talking about wanting to play in the World Cup squad, wanting to get in the World Cup squad. So he'll obviously be keen to get minutes. It will be interesting to see how that affects if he's, if it gets to January, maybe it gets to December, he's not played a lot of time. If he turns to Rodgers and says, look, I want to be in the World Cup squad, I need to play, I want to go out on loan, there's lots of kind of movement there. Just quickly picking a team, you'd imagine it'd be Ralston, Tierney, that back 4.
Yeah, I'll just because I thought Kieran was almost moved to tears when he was talking about how much he was loving Colby Donovan this season. So let's say for Kieran's benefit that Colby Donovan starts and comes back in, and maybe it's Donovan and Johnson on the bench. So we'll throw him that wee bone. Good
stuff. Midfield 3, you've got to imagine it's going to be the 3.
Yeah, probably is the 3, isn't it? But I would really like to see Arne Engels get more of a run in the team, just to see if he can get back to some of the levels he hit last year. But ultimately, as frustrating a watch as he can be at times, Benjamin Nygren is one of the only players that's actually producing goals, assists, finished. So it has to be those 3.
Yeah, McGregor, Nygren and Hatate. Up front, Iheanacho, Tanetki, absolutely stick-ons, unless he puts Tanetki to the right and brings on Balakisha, or he plays Yang, or I don't know.
I think it will be Tanetki, Iheanacho and Forrest. I think that's what it will be. Unless
Maeda's available, which it seems may be unlikely, but we'll find out tomorrow at the press conference. I can't watch Yang, mate. I'm done.
No, same. I can't do it. It's not good for your health.
It's not. So at the cynic.co, we've got podcasts. You know, as I say, we had 40 podcasts last month. Tomorrow, we've got the opposition report. We'll be looking at Dundee in a little bit more detail, some stats, some tactics, and we'll be looking at how Celtic are going to line up and how Dundee line up. Then on Saturday, we've got the Untitled podcast, which is a fun podcast with myself, Chris Bowd, and Chris Armani. Just a bit of fun, enjoyable. And on Sunday, we've got the reaction to the Dundee game. So as soon as the final whistle is blown at Dundee, we'll start recording and it'll be put out straight afterwards. Podcast near daily, at least 7 a week. So check out the cynic.co or go to the Cynic on Patreon. Stuart Dugan, an absolute joy as always, sir.
We did it, mate. They said that it couldn't be done with the two of us, but we showed them. Hope that Barry enjoys his last pina colada and Scott enjoys, don't know what he's doing, something
at work,
and then we'll maybe see them next week.
Absolutely. Stuart Dugan, an absolute joy. From Stuart Dugan, from myself, Chris Gallagher, this has been the Cynic Weekly, and we'll speak to you down the road.